Welkom bij Valuejagers podcast. De podcast over beleggen en goedkope aandelen.
Hi everyone and welcome to a new podcast for Valuejagers. My name is Tim van Horenbeke and I'm your host. And today we will have an interview with another very exciting crypto company. First of all, I would like to welcome our own crypto specialist at Valuejagers, Ronald Hendricks. Hi Ronald.
Hello.
And
Hello.
Thank you for joining us again today.
Yes.
So moving on to our special guest, I'd like to start off with a big and warm welcome to Mr. Domenic Carosa. Hi Domenic, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation to this interview.
Thanks, Tim and Ronald. Good to be on the program today.
Thank you. Perhaps a very brief introduction. So Domenic is founder and chairman at Banxa Holdings, and their mission is to onboard the masses to crypto by providing payments and compliance solutions to global digital asset platforms. But please, Domenic, go ahead and tell us all about Banxa Holdings and how you came up with the idea of establishing the company.
Certainly. Thanks. Maybe what I'll do, I'll provide a little bit of background on myself and then talk more about the industry and the company and effectively what we're trying to create. On a personal basis, I've been involved with technology since mid-90s, listed my first company on the Australian Stock Exchange in 2000, which I ran for 8 years, and then ran an early stage venture capital fund investing into SaaS. Got interested in crypto in 2013. The way my brain works, I need to do in order to learn. So I bought some mining equipment, bought some Bitcoin. And then in 2014, we launched what is still running today, Bitcoin.com.au, as an easy way for Australians to buy crypto. Fast forward to where we are now, we listed Banxa on the TSXV and the OTCQX early 2021. And just, I guess, in terms of the industry, before I sort of jump into Banxa, I've certainly seen significant changes and evolution in the industry. And I'd say back in 2014, some of the key things, it was very retail focused. It was partly what I call the Wild West. There were no rules. If we fast forward to where we are now, the industry's only becoming more and more regulated, which is actually music to our ears, and I explain why. And increasingly, we've got much more institutional money coming into the space. And obviously, we've seen, prices of coins increase, but that's really not the main thing that we focus on. It's really about adoption and how many more people have wallets and how many more people are interested in NFTs and DeFi. So that's a bit more about the industry. In terms of Banxa, and coming back to the point, our vision is really about democratizing finance. And the way that we do that is really about onboarding the masses, onboarding the next 1 billion people to the sector. And the way that we're going to do this, and if you just sort of once again take a step back, where do these people exist? They exist in the fiat world, in the euro, the US, the Canadian dollar world. They don't have Bitcoin or Ethereum sitting in their wallet. And so the strategy of the company is to provide a platform that allows effectively the transfer, the change from fiat money into digital assets. And so I've got a couple of slides here that I'll just provide a little bit more granular information. We're actually the world's first stock exchange listed fintech, PSP and RegTech company. And I'll talk more about compliance in a moment. And what we're doing is we're building the bridge between the fiat world and the digital asset world through what we call the fiat on-ramps, as well as the fiat off-ramps. And our business is predominantly B2B focused. It operates in a regulated space and it's highly scalable. And I'll talk more about that. So if you want to put us into a box, the best way to describe us is we're like the PayPal for the digital asset industry. There are 4 core things that we do as an organization. One is that we aggregate a whole series of both global and local payment methods. And when I say global, I mean MasterCard, Visa, Apple Pay. And then local meaning, for example, here in the Netherlands, Ideal in the Netherlands, Interact in Canada, ACH in the US. We bring all of these payments together and then we wrap it with our regulatory and compliance platform. We own multiple digital asset licenses around the world. Sometimes they're called VASPs, Virtual Asset Service Provider licenses. We own a number of them and we're continuing to acquire new VASPs. And once again, I'll get into the rationale for that. And then all of that is underpinned by our own proprietary technology stack that does everything from data pricing payments to delivering the coin to the customer, both on-chain and off-chain, which basically means in the most efficient manner possible. We then wrap up our technology and our compliance into an API or a widget, which is just another fancy name for a technical connection. And so we then plug this into global crypto-to-crypto exchanges like Binance, Huobi, OKX, and many others. And increasingly, where we see that next evolution of growth is to take what we're doing around payments and compliance and plugging it into neobanks, fintechs, consumer apps, coming back to the point of how we're going to help onboard the next billion people to crypto. They're not going to be the crypto natives because they're already there. It's going to really be tapping into that next, the mass market. And the mass market aren't really crypto natives yet. So that's effectively what we're planning to do as an organization. One of the ways that we measure performance in the company is through a measure we call TTV, total transaction value. As you can see, we've had good solid growth. We released our October numbers recently, and we did 160 million transaction value for October. And November looks like another very, very strong month for us. Obviously, I can't talk about that. Suffice to say, we're pretty pleased. In terms of, just very quickly from a cap structure perspective, about 45 million shares on issue and about 52 million on a fully diluted basis. And we're listed on the TSXV, OTCQX, and Frankfurt. We have already commenced the process for our NASDAQ uplist. We think that our view is Banxa belongs on NASDAQ, and we ultimately believe that's where where we'll ultimately be able to get the right kind of valuation on NASDAQ. And I've got a comparable slide, which I'll sort of talk about in a moment. Very recently, we released our audited financial results. We work on a 30th of June financial year. I may be talking US dollars just to keep it really simple for everyone. Over the financial year, which started 1st of July 2020 and completed 30th of June 2021, we did just over $500 million US of transactions on the platform and over 30 million of revenue. And up until that point, the last recording period, we just had over $80 million of cash and cash equivalents. So quite a strong balance sheet. And our adjusted EBITDA was just over $1 million and a small stat loss, which included non-cash items, as well as public company listing costs of 2.7. And to date, we've got about 80 B2B customers. I'm not going to go through the next couple of slides. It's maybe too much detail here in terms of, as I say, getting into the weeds of our financials. But so what I will say is, we're very open. You can, see our numbers. You can go onto CEDA or onto our website and download our reports. One note around the balance sheet, we basically do not capitalize any development. We expense all technology and R&D, which in my view is the most conservative way in order to do it. I'm not going to get into accounting policies. And now just a couple of key things with regards to the business and why people use us. Our product is available in over 100 countries around the world. And we're really about, like, as you can see on the screen, it's like that's a widget example. That's an implementation that a number of our partners use where you would click on Banxa. Maybe just to take a step back and say, well, how does this work? Why do I need to use Banxa? If you, for example, and I'll jump into this slide. If you log onto, after this webinar, after this podcast, you log onto KuCoin, by way of example, which is a crypto-to-crypto exchange. When you log in, you basically start with no Bitcoin, no Ethereum. And for you to actually get involved in that ecosystem, what we'll do, you click on the Banxa button, we take you through an AML KYC process, which is all digital. You pay, let's say if you're in the Netherlands, you pay by ideal €1,000, or if you're in Canada, you pay 1,000 Canadian dollars. You click a few buttons, you say if you want Bitcoin, Ethereum, a stable coin, or any of the other 40 coins that we offer. And then 5 minutes later, you've got $1,000 or €1,000 of Bitcoin sitting in your KuCoin wallet, ready for you to start trading. So that's what we call the fiat on-ramping. And then very recently, we turned on the fiat off-ramping to a number of our customers, which allows you to go back the other way, which is much more complicated to do because we needed to get regulatory approval because there's an extra couple of steps from a regulatory perspective. And second of all, we had to implement some extra technology, which allowed us to check for the provenance of the coin and the wallet to make sure it hasn't been used for nefarious purposes. So that's now available in Australian, GBP and Euro, and very soon we're going to turn it on for Canadian and US dollars. And we think that will actually make a material difference to our total transaction value. Sort of following on, why does the industry actually work with us? And why are we beating our competitors? First and foremost, we actually have more ways to pay, particularly around the local payment methods, than most of our competitors put together. And the reason local payments are important is because they're faster and cheaper, and they actually have a higher conversion rate. We know, and I think most people know, credit card is inherently expensive. It's 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5%. But if you use a local payment method, the costs are pennies or in the cents, which then comes back to the second reason why our partners, our customers use us. By using local payment methods, it inherently provides a higher conversion rate than just credit card, which is what most of our competitors use. And then thirdly, and actually also very importantly, is that our platform manages the fraud and the chargebacks and the risk. And so effectively, we remove the risk on behalf of our customers. That's the other part of our secret sauce that we provide out to our customers. I'm not going to go through all the sort of key highlights here in regards to insights. Suffice to say, over the last 12 months, we've really added significantly to our management team. Some of the last hires, for example, Jan is ex-JP Morgan. Stefan, who's head of our compliance, is ex-compliance of the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. Chloe, who's ex-Google Asia Pacific, is now our chief of staff. So we've really been adding people that have got significant experience and have been there and done it before. At the same time, our network of partners or customers has been increasing. Only really in the last couple of months have we actually got a full complement, head of sales, head of BD, as well as customer success managers. So you're actually going to see an increased number of B2B customers that we bring on board. And then point 4 is really about operational efficiencies. We're now doing thousands of orders every day, and our system really is able to handle that. So we really focused on increasing our capacity and our throughput on the platform in the last 12 months. And coming back to comparables, this was basically prepared in October. Our EV to revenue, the industry medium is 15.2, the average is 18. Banxa is at 5.4. As you can see there, most of the companies are listed on NASDAQ. And coming back to the point I made at the start, my view is that's ultimately where I believe that we're going to be able to maximize value for shareholders is by being listed on NASDAQ. And at the same time, the other companies listed here that haven't been listed on NASDAQ have been listed for 3+ years. We haven't even been listed for 12 months. So it's going to take us time to build trust and reputation in the marketplace. There's also been a number of comparables in the space, private companies that have actually raised. And this is an example of sometimes private companies having valuations that are far higher than public companies. And for example, 2 examples from October. So only last month, Ramp, which is effectively a startup in the space, raised at a $300 million US valuation. For context, Banxa's currently got about 120 million US valuation. And MoonPay, which is one of our competitors, they've got annualized transaction value just slightly higher than us, not that much more, just a little bit more. They raised last month at a $3 billion valuation, which personally I thought was over the top, but in terms of key catalysts over the next 12 months, obviously we're going to focus on TTV, growing our B2B customer base, acquiring more licenses. That's really partly how do we create a moat around our company, and then adding more coins. And then there's, in my view, significant opportunities in DeFi as well as the NFT space. So that's really, let's call it the formal part of the presentation. And maybe just to kind of complete that loop, if you believe the hypothesis that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and this whole ecosystem is here to stay, then companies like Banxa that are providing the bridge between the fiat world and the digital asset world, in my view, will be companies that will prosper, because effectively we are the infrastructure, the picks and the shovels of the industry. Gents, any questions?
Yeah, lots of questions. It was a very good presentation. Thank you for that. Like I said to my subscribers, I think also Banxa is one of the cheapest crypto stocks on the stock exchange. But do you see an advantage in being on the stock exchange already, because the valuation is lower than your competitors?
Yes.
What's the advantage?
There's a couple of reasons why we listed the company, and maybe I'll talk about the byproduct. For example, when we now go and talk to customers, and in fact, there was only a customer a couple of weeks ago that said they could choose between ourselves and our competitor. They took it to their internal compliance department, and the compliance and the finance department said, actually, they're both very good, albeit Banxa has more payment methods, but we prefer Banxa because they're listed, they've got audited accounts, they're transparent. So that's, and my view is, transparency in the crypto space is actually really important. It's actually a value add. We also know when we go and talk to regulators around the world, the fact that we're listed is actually a major plus. And so we made this choice a couple of years ago. We wanted to list the company because, in our view, having a company in the crypto space that is audited with an independent board that is open and transparent, in my view, is actually good, not only for our customers and our stakeholders, but it's actually good for the industry as well.
Value for life. Levenslang beleggen in ondergewaardeerde aandelen. U betaalt 1 keer een activatie en ontvangt continu tips en updates. Voor altijd. Ontdek Value for Life via valuejagers.com/value-for-life.
Okay, and do you think it's winner takes it all kind of industry, or will there be multiple players in the future?
Good question. As Jack Welch, ex-GE, used to say, you want to be one of the top 3 or you want to get out. Our objective at Banxa is to basically be number 1. You know, being listed also helps us if we want to make acquisitions further down the track. Obviously, post the NASDAQ listing, we not only got our cash, but also have our equity available. So in our view, my view is, I think the number 1 player will own 50%, number 2 and 3 will own the other 50%, and then there'll be crumbs remaining. And I think where the industry sits today, Banxa is certainly in that top 3. And my view is number 1 is what we're going for.
Okay, great to hear that. Now, what are your most important, who uses Banxa the most? Are that retail people, or is it institutional players that use the Banxa?
So today, our business model is B2B2C. So we're connected to global crypto exchanges and wallets, and their customers are what you call natural persons, individuals. And that was a really good start for us. And that side of the business is growing very rapidly. But where we see that next evolution of growth will be in the institutional market. Early next year, we're going to be opening up our services to B2B, to business customers. It's obviously more complicated to do AML, KYC, and dealing with that whole compliance layer for businesses, because you don't need to look at the directors, the shareholders, the underlying beneficial owners. It's much more complicated. We now have the infrastructure to be able to do this. So you're going to be able to see us move down that path. And at the same time, right now, our core customers are what I call the crypto natives, the crypto exchanges, the wallets. We've got a couple of DeFi platforms, very soon some NFT platforms as well. But where we see that big opportunity, the next billion people, they will come from existing neobanks, fintechs, consumer apps. We're already talking to a number of those, let's call it more traditional banking firms that have a customer base. They've already got fiat accounts. So you've got, for example, a Euro account, or a US dollar account combined with a debit card or credit card. And so we're talking with them around adding Banxa on a white label basis that gives their customers access to buying, holding, and exchanging crypto all on a white label basis. And that for us will be the next big evolution of growth for Banxa.
Yeah, that's a great evolution, I think. The white label, I researched it with other platforms also. They have their own name, but they also use the white labels to grow much bigger, because traditional banks don't want the big traditional banks don't want their another name, but they want as like it's from themselves. So if they use the white label, you get the revenue, but not the name. So that's the most important thing, I guess. But how do you see, like today, last few days, it's a bit of a red days on the crypto market. Do you see an impact when, let's say, Bitcoin goes down 30–40%? You have the transaction value, but that's the most important. But do you see an impact on Banxa when the crypto is a little bit out of favor?
Yes, and some of our record days have been when the Bitcoin price has dropped 10%, when people are buying the dip. So this is the other thing that I think it's an important message for us to get across. We're actually more correlated with the actual volatility. So volatility is actually our friend. We actually like volatility, and we're more correlated to the volumes at the exchanges as opposed to the price of Bitcoin. Our average dollar value has been roughly the same when Bitcoin's at 60K US and also when it was roughly 10K US. So the actual average dollar value is the same throughout. So that's one important point. The second point is one of the good ways to effectively correlate how our business is going is you go to like a website like coinmarketcap.com, click on the exchange link, you can actually see the trading volumes on the exchanges. If that's up, that's really good for Banxa. If it's down, it's not so good for Banxa. So we're actually correlated to that as opposed to directly correlated with the price. So what happens when the price goes up? There's an element of FOMO. People basically want to buy in because they don't want to miss out. When the price drops, the people who are already in there use that as an opportunity to buy the dip. So once again, volatility is our friend.
Ontdek een spotgoedkoop aandeel dat steeds populairder wordt dankzij de podcastindustrie. Gratis te downloaden via valuejagers.com/podcast.
Okay. I also see that you have a number of domain names at your. You bought a number of domain names. Bitcoin.ca, Bitcoin.li, Bitcoin.ke, etc. All Bitcoin URLs. That's from Banxa. Is that a hidden gem in the Banxa account, or is this something that you will use when it's necessary?
In fact, I believe Banxa owns the largest portfolio of generic Bitcoin domain names in the world. And I'll say I'm a domainer from the mid-90s, so I love generic domain names for many, many reasons. It would be remiss of me to talk about that in detail because we haven't made an announcement to the market. However, we've got those domains there. I believe there are ways to, let's call it enhance shareholder value using those particular assets. I guess what I will say is you'll see some, let's call it movement sometime next year.
Okay, looking forward to it. Now, I asked the same question at Mark Bins and Ben Samaru. I'm going to ask it to you too, Domenic, but it's always nice to hear when insiders how they see for the future of crypto and the future of their own company. But you also explained Banxa is growing very, very rapidly. But how do you see the future of the crypto in about 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And for me, and I'll take a step back, in 2013, I read the various white papers, and for me, it was actually less about the price of the coin at that point. I think it was a couple of $100 when I first got involved, as in the price of Bitcoin. But what really struck me was, the financial infrastructure that was being created, that was possible to actually create, very much leveraging the blockchain. And I'm not going to get into sort of too much sort of nerdy type stuff. But what we've actually seen from that, not only have we seen a growth of Bitcoin, but other coins like Ethereum, which is really that smart contract layer. And now we've got verticals, DeFi verticals, which are really disintermediating the banks and the financial institutions. And NFTs, we have just scratched the surface with regards to NFTs, is my view. And I know there's millions of dollars being spent on crypto type kitties and cyberpunks, but for me, that's just kind of like scratching the surface. Once you start, and I'll take a step back again, my view is the tokenization of virtually everything on the blockchain. That for me is going to be the future. And where this will be mass market is when people are using the blockchain and they don't even know that they're using it from a user experience perspective. And we're not there yet. We know you're going to be like a semi-genius to kind of work out how to deal with your private keys and your public keys. And for most people, you've already lost as soon as you start talking about private keys. And so I guess part of our job as an industry is to make it really simple for consumers to onboard into crypto, to offboard when they want, and then to provide utility with that crypto, whether it's giving access to loans, interest-bearing accounts in the DeFi space, or being able to support their favorite artists in the NFT world. And 2 or 3 years ago, DeFi and NFTs didn't exist. Just imagine over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be these new verticals that haven't even been created yet. This is why I'm just so excited about Banxa, as well as the whole industry, is we've got a blank sheet of paper. We're actually helping create the future and ultimately giving the control of finance and putting that back into the control of the individual. And that is a mission that is worth working towards.
Okay, great. Looking forward to the future of crypto and the future of Banxa. Tim, do you have a closing question or?
No, nothing. I think that we've reached the end of this podcast. So thank you very much to Ronald and to Domenic for joining me today, and to our viewers and listeners. I hope that you enjoyed this interview. If you do, please hit the like button. And if you're interested in investing at Banxa Holdings, or if you want to read more about them, you can always visit their website, banxa.com. We at Valuejagers will, of course, also continue to keep following them. So if you want to receive their latest updates or news, please subscribe to our Crypto for Life report and make sure you won't have to miss out on any of these updates. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And until the next podcast. Bye.
Valuejagers podcast. Te beluisteren via de 3 grootste podcastplatformen ter wereld: YouTube, Spotify en iTunes. En vergeet niet om onze gratis aandelentip te downloaden via valuejagers.com/podcast. Het is een spotgoedkoop aandeel dat steeds populairder wordt dankzij de sterk groeiende podcastindustrie.